All right, so you're in York, right? You've done the whole tourist thing, battled the crowds on the shambles, maybe even had a spooky encounter or two. But have you ever thought about checking out a spot that's just a hop, skip, and a jump from Clifford's Tower?
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about the York Army Museum.
Uh-huh.
You could be admiring some seriously old fortifications 1 minute, and then boom, you're face to face with objects that have witnessed some pretty incredible stuff, like
Hey.
acts of bravery and sacrifice, and even a rather mischievous deer.
Really?
Yeah, trust me, this is a detour you won't regret.
Absolutely. It's a bit of a hidden gem, really, and it's actually a pretty recent addition to York's historical scene. It only opened its doors in 2015 thanks to some support from the Heritage Lottery Fund.
Hmm.
They're the folks that help preserve and share all those amazing stories from the UK's past.
Right.
And the museum focuses specifically on the Royal Yorkshire Regiment and the Royal Dragoon Guards.
Wow.
We're talking about regiments with histories dating all the way back to 1685 when the modern British Army was just getting started. So yeah, a serious amount of history packed into one place.
And they really do go all out. Like you said, they don't skimp on the details. They cover everything from their battle honors, which is basically a fancy way of saying all the places they've seen action. And let me tell you, that's a pretty long list, to the more personal and sometimes downright odd stories of the people who led them, the colonels. And of course, you get to see how soldiering has changed over time, the equipment, the weapons that have evolved from swords to, well, things that make a much bigger bang in those ever-changing uniforms. But it's not just about the stuff they used, is it?
No, not at all.
It's about the people behind it, all right.
Exactly, the human side of it.
Hmm.
And the museum does a fantastic job of capturing the essence, the ethos, if you will, of these regiments.
Mm.
That underlying spirit, the strong sense of community that develops within these military units and the crucial role that memory plays in keeping those stories alive.
And speaking of memory and stories, if you want to really connect with the individual experiences of soldiers during wartime, you've got to spend some time in Zone 5.
Yep.
Zone 5.
Zone 5. Trust me, it's powerful stuff.
Okay.
It's where you get this raw, unfiltered look
Mm.
at what it was like to be a soldier in the thick of it. Through their own words, personal testimonies, plus powerful photographs and film footage, you really get a sense of what they went through. So for this deep dive, and I guess you've already signed up for it by listening, our mission is to explore the York Army Museum. Whether you're a tourist looking for something a bit different, or a local wanting to connect with the region's military past, we're going to uncover some truly fascinating objects, and we're going to give you some top tips for your visit. And hey, we'll try to keep it entertaining along the way because history, just like a good Yorkshire pudding, is best served with a bit of warmth and humor, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's about connecting with these stories, on a human level.
Oh.
And if you find yourself wanting to explore even more of what York has to offer, I highly recommend checking out Alistair's book. It's called York, Local Knowledge Must Do Top 10s and the Vouchers to Get Them for Less. It's available on iBooks and Google Books.
It's packed with local insights and even has some handy discounts.
Nice.
And while you're in town, you should really look into booking one of the lovely holiday homes at www.houseofyork.org. You'll have a great stay, I guarantee it.
Okay, so let's get down to business, shall we?
Okay.
We mentioned earlier that this museum is the proud home of the collections belonging to the Prince of Wales's own regiment of Yorkshire and the Royal Dragoon Guards. Now, we're not talking about some short-lived groups here. These guys have been around for over 3 centuries. That's continuous service, folks. And importantly, the museum also tells the story of their modern-day descendant, the Royal Yorkshire Regiment. It's all connected, you see.
Yes, it's fascinating how it all ties together.
Right.
The museum is laid out really well, too. They've got 6 themed areas, each one giving you a different perspective on this incredible history.
Oh, I like that.
So you start with roll call, which helps you understand, the different roles within the Army, like the difference between cavalry, historically, soldiers on horseback infantry, the foot soldiers, and the armored divisions, which are the more modern tank and vehicle-based units.
Gotcha.
So once you grasp those basic differences, you can really appreciate the rest of the museum.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's Lines of Fire, which traces the regiment's involvement in conflicts all over the globe over those amazing 300-plus years. And the Sharp End is particularly cool. It showcases how a soldier's equipment and weapons have transformed over the centuries.
Oh, and then there's Regimental Ties, which gives you a peek into the world of the officers' mess. That was like their central hub for, bonding and socializing and maybe even a bit of well-deserved relaxation. Then you've got Soldiering On, which really gives a voice to the soldiers themselves. They share their personal stories about life in some really tough situations, some really difficult conflicts. And finally, you have the Yorkshire soldier, which brings the whole story into the present day. It examines how those centuries of tradition and service have shaped the lives of soldiers today. It's a really well-rounded and comprehensive look at their history.
It really is. And you won't believe the variety of things they have on display. You'll see how military fashion has evolved, from those iconic red coats, which, let's be honest, weren't exactly designed for blending in to the much more subtle camouflage they use in modern warfare.
Right.
And reliable muskets to the highly sophisticated firearms they have today.
Oh, speaking of muskets, I stumbled upon this little historical tidbit that I thought was rather funny. Apparently, the term dragoons, that cavalry regiment we were talking about earlier, it might actually come from this image back in the 17th century of the smoke from their early muskets kind of looking like a dragon breathing fire.
Oh, wow.
So, dragoon. It's a pretty dramatic origin story for a military title, wouldn't you say?
It really is. It just goes to show you how language and military history are often intertwined in these unexpected ways. And when you think about the Royal Dragoon Guards, it's amazing to remember that they were actually formed by merging four earlier cavalry regiments, each with their own impressive history.
Mm-hmm.
The Royal Irish Dragoon Guards, Princess Charlotte of Wales's Dragoon Guards, the Enniskilling Dragoons, and the Princess Royal's Dragoon Guards. It's like they assembled a superhero team, each one bringing their own unique skills and background to this new powerful force.
And on the infantry side, while the Yorkshire Regiment, as we know it today, was formed relatively recently in 2006, it carries on the legacy of several prominent Yorkshire regiments, including the Prince of Wales's own regiment of Yorkshire, the Green Howards, and the Duke of Wellington's regiment. And their combined collection in the museum is huge, like 3,500 items.
Wow.
That's a whole lot of stories just waiting to be discovered.
It is. And beyond those specific regimental collections, they've got this really significant resource, a database with information on nearly 75,000 World War I memorials from all across Britain.
Wow.
What makes it so valuable is that you can search it by name, service number, battalion, or regiment. It's a goldmine for anyone researching family history or, the war memorials in their local community. It's a real testament to the sheer scale of that conflict and how it touched so many lives.
Okay, so we've established that the museum is a real treasure trove of history. But for those of us with limited time or, who just love a good highlight reel, what are some of the absolute must-see objects? Let's jump into our top 10 intriguing discoveries.
All right, let's do it.
First up, we've got the Deddington Standard. Now, this sounds like it's seen some action.
Oh, it has. It proudly holds the title of being the oldest surviving British cavalry standard. It dates back to 1743. That's almost 3 centuries old. It's made from this beautiful crimson silk damask with gold and silver lace and this intricate wire embroidery. It's really a work of art, though it served a much more practical purpose on the battlefield.
Right, this wasn't just some fancy flag they waved around at parades. This thing had a job to do, didn't it?
Absolutely. In the chaos of battle, it acted as a crucial rallying point for the troops. It helped soldiers quickly locate their regiment amidst all the smoke and confusion. And there's this incredible story associated with this particular standard from the Battle of Dettingen. The standard bearer, a guy named Cornet Henry Richardson, displayed extraordinary bravery. He fought like a lion to protect it, refusing to let it fall into enemy hands, even after sustaining an unbelievable 37 wounds from enemy fire.
37 wounds. That's almost hard to believe. What happened to this amazingly resilient standard bearer?
Well, in recognition of his incredible courage and, his unwavering determination to defend the standard, he was later awarded the standard itself. It became like a personal emblem of his valor and the dedication of all those who serve.
A true battlefield hero and his battle-scarred flag.
Exactly.
All right, moving on, our next fascinating object is General Scarlett's Crimean War helmet. Now, a helmet might not sound all that thrilling, but this one apparently has a story literally etched into it.
It does. This helmet belonged to General James York Scarlett. He was a key commander who led the 5th Dragoon Guards during the Crimean War back in the mid-19th century. His helmet is famous for its role in the charge of the Heavy Brigade at the Battle of Balaclava. You might be more familiar with another charge from that battle.
Oh, yeah, the charge of the Light Brigade.
Yes.
Not exactly a shining example of military success, was it?
Not quite. Well, the charge of the Light Brigade ended in tragedy. Scarlett's charge of the Heavy Brigade, even though they were facing a much larger Russian force, was a resounding success. And the helmet he wore during that battle bears a very visible reminder of that victory, a long dent on the left-hand side made by a direct blow from a Russian cavalry saber.
So you can actually see the force of that impact.
Yes.
Now that's what I call a souvenir. Okay, switching gears completely. Now our third object is the tank crew cooking vessel. This one really speaks to that essential British need, doesn't it? A good cuppa.
It certainly does. The museum actually makes a point of highlighting, that almost legendary British love of tea and how that extended even into the battlefield.
Mm.
During the Second World War, tank crews often had to risk going outside their armored vehicles, potentially into dangerous territory, just to boil water for a hot drink or to cook a meal.
Oh my goodness.
Not exactly the ideal way to enjoy a nice, relaxing tea break.
No.
So after the war, they realized they needed a safer, more practical solution. This led to the development of these special boiling vessels that could be used right inside the tank. This became particularly crucial during the Cold War, with that constant threat of, nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare, where crews might have to remain sealed inside their tanks for extended periods. Hot food and a warm drink weren't just luxuries. They were essential for morale and keeping the crew going.
So it wasn't just about satisfying that craving for tea, it was about survival in some pretty intense situations. How did these ingenious little gadgets actually work?
They were powered by the tank's electrical system and could be used not only for boiling water, for that all-important cup of tea, but also for cooking those prepackaged rations. It seems like a small thing, but it played a big role in the daily lives and well-being of tank crews under those difficult conditions.
From the cramped confines of a tank to the vast frozen wilderness of Antarctica. Our next object is connected to Captain Oates' Antarctic expeditions. Now that's a name that immediately brings to mind incredible self-sacrifice.
It does. Captain Lawrence Oates of the 6th Inniskilling Dragoons was a member of Scott's ill-fated Antarctic expedition in 1912. The museum has several very moving items that belong to him. You might recall that the expedition faced extreme hardships made even worse by the crushing realization that Amundsen's Norwegian team had reached the South Pole first.
Yeah, and that brutal return journey was just one setback after another, wasn't
It was a terrible ordeal. They faced horrific blizzards, dwindling supplies, and numerous injuries from the extreme cold. Captain Oates himself was badly affected by frostbite, and he was acutely aware that his worsening condition, made worse by old injuries from the Boer War, was slowing down the rest of the team and lessening their already slim chances of survival.
And then came that incredibly poignant and selfless act.
Yes. On March 17th, 1912, which was his 32nd birthday, during another ferocious blizzard, Oates made the decision to leave the tent. According to Scott's diary, his last words were, "I'm just going outside and maybe some time." He deliberately sacrificed his own life, hoping that it would give the remaining members of the expedition a better chance of reaching safety. Sadly, as we know, it was all in vain.
A truly heartbreaking story of courage and selflessness. What personal items of his does the museum have?
They have his Polar Medal and his Queen South Africa Medal, representing his earlier service, along with his belt, his waistcoat, and even a menu that he and his fellow expedition members signed during happier times. These personal belongings offer a powerful and very moving connection to his bravery and his ultimate sacrifice.
Absolutely. Okay, on to a different theater of war and a different kind of symbolic object. Our fifth discovery is the D-Day flag. This one sounds like it has a strong Yorkshire connection.
It does. In the spring of 1944, while the Allied forces were busy preparing for the D-Day landings, the 2nd Battalion East Yorkshire Regiment was stationed in Waterlooville, Hampshire. And in a remarkable show of support and community spirit, the women of the Women's Voluntary Service, who were also stationed there, hand-sewed these beautiful flags for each company of the battalion, as well as their battalion headquarters. They even embroidered them with the White Rose of Yorkshire, a powerful symbol of their regional identity.
A wonderful gesture of solidarity and support on the eve of such a monumental event.
Absolutely. And these weren't just decorative flags either. They were carried onto the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, serving as vital rallying points for the soldiers in the midst of all the intense fighting and confusion. The flag that's on display at the museum is the actual battalion HQ flag that landed on that historic day.
Wow.
You can even see that they added a carefully stitched anchor to it, symbolizing the vital role played by the Royal Navy in the success of the landings.
A piece of history that was actually there on those famous beaches. Now that's powerful. Okay, for our sixth object, let's take a more lighthearted turn, shall we?
Okay.
We have Billy the Deer's collar. Now this is a regimental mascot, so tell me more.
Oh, this is such a charming story. Billy the Deer was the beloved mascot of the 14th Regiment of Foot from 1878 to 1889. And he wasn't just any deer either.
Right.
He was an Indian spotted deer, a rather exotic gift presented to the regiment by the Raja of Kashipur.
What a gift. So how does a deer become a regimental mascot? I'm picturing this very confused animal trying to march in formation.
Well, apparently, Billy took to military life with gusto.
Really?
He would march proudly at the front of special parades, flanked by 2 drummer boys.
No way.
And get this, he even had the honor of meeting Queen Victoria.
Royal encounter for a deer. I can
Yeah.
just imagine him bowing politely. What other shenanigans did Billy get up to?
Apparently, he had a bit of a sweet tooth and was known to try to snag sugary treats from children.
Oh, no.
And sometimes, much to the dismay of his handlers, he'd even eat the sweets wrappers and all.
Oh, Billy.
He also had a mischievous streak and was known to disrupt the regiment's tennis and cricket matches by running through the nets. The silver collar on display is a wonderful reminder of this unique and clearly much-loved regimental character.
What a delightful story. Okay, back to more serious but equally fascinating artifacts.
Okay.
Number 7 on our list is the Victoria Crosses. Now, these represent the highest level of bravery awards, right?
Absolutely. The Victoria Cross is the highest military decoration for gallantry awarded in the British and Commonwealth Armed Forces. It's given for most conspicuous bravery or some daring or preeminent act of valor or self-sacrifice or extreme devotion to duty in the presence of the enemy.
Wow.
It was created by Queen Victoria during the Crimean War, and it's famously made from bronze taken from captured cannons at the Siege of Sevastopol. It's not just a medal, it's a piece of history.
And the York Army Museum is lucky enough to have several of these prestigious medals in its collection.
They do. They have 5 Victoria Crosses. 4 were awarded for acts of incredible courage during the First World War to George William Schaefer, John Cunningham, John Jack Harrison, and Albert Mountain. The 5th one was awarded for similar heroism during the Second World War to Eric Anderson.
It's amazing to think about the bravery it took to earn those medals.
It is. To put it into perspective, only 634 VCs were awarded during World War I, and 8 of those went to men from the East and West Yorkshire regiments. The museum's collection represents a significant and really humbling part of that history.
Our 8th object takes us back to the Napoleonic Wars. We're talking about Captain Brown's Waterloo coatee,
Oh, yes.
a jacket with a pretty dramatic past, it seems.
Indeed. This is a short, close-fitting jacket, what they called a coatee, that belonged to Captain Brown of the 6th Enniskilling Dragoons. He wore it at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, the battle that finally ended Napoleon's ambitions. The Enniskillings played a key role in that powerful British heavy cavalry charge that afternoon.
And Captain Brown had a rather harrowing experience during that battle, didn't he?
He did. His horse was shot out from under him, so he had to continue fighting on foot. Then he was seriously wounded multiple times. What makes the coatee on display particularly poignant is that you can still see the bloodstains on the lining of the right sleeve from his injuries. The surgeon who treated him after the battle had to cut the sleeve open to get to the wounds.
You can still see the blood. That's an incredibly powerful link to the past.
It is. The museum also has part of a letter written by Captain Brown's brother-in-law, which describes in detail his ordeal during the battle. It really brings home the brutal realities these individuals faced in the middle of these historic events.
Moving forward in time once more, our 9th object is Private Wraithby's pressed poppy, a small, delicate item that carries so much meaning.
Exactly. This belonged to Private George Wraithby of the West Yorkshire Regiment. He was serving on the Western Front during the First World War.
Okay.
Amidst all the unimaginable devastation and destruction of the trenches, he carefully pressed 2 poppy flowers between the pages of his leather notebook.
And, of course, the poppy has become such a potent and enduring symbol of remembrance for that terrible conflict.
The poppy's resilience.
Yeah.
Its ability to grow in the churned-up soil of those battlefields where so much else had been destroyed, made it a natural symbol of sacrifice and remembrance. Private Wraithby's pressed poppies, although faded and fragile now, still survive today.
Wow.
They offer a very personal and moving connection to all those lives lost in that war. It's incredible to think that something as small as a flower can hold so much meaning.
A truly powerful reminder. And finally, our 10th object is the unknown soldier's artifacts. This one sounds especially poignant.
It is. These are everyday objects that were found on a World War I battlefield. They belonged to a soldier from the West Yorkshire Regiment, but he was never identified.
Oh.
While the things made of wood and fabric have decayed over time, what remains of his British steel helmet and the working parts of his Lee Enfield rifle are still there.
Such a haunting reminder of a life cut tragically short.
Indeed. Along with these larger items, there are also more personal things, like a few buttons from his uniform, his standard issue water canteen, and even a toothbrush. So many soldiers who died during the First World War have no known grave.
Right.
These simple belongings are such powerful reminders of all those individuals who were lost and never identified.
It really makes you stop and think about the true human cost of conflict. So we've had a look at some of the remarkable treasures you can find at the York Army Museum.
Yes.
Now, for those of you who are inspired to visit, what are the essential things to keep in mind to make the most of your experience?
Well, first of all, the museum is in a fantastic spot, right in the heart of York City Center on Tower Street.
Hmm.
It's right across from the iconic Clifford's Tower and conveniently located next door to the Hilton Hotel.
Okay.
That means it's easy to get to from other popular attractions like Fairfax House and the Jorvik Viking Center. You practically can't miss it.
Location, location, location. Always a plus. What are the practical stuff? Opening times, admission fees, all that.
The museum is open Monday to Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., but keep in mind that the last admission is at 4:30 p.m., and unfortunately, it's closed on Sundays. As for admission, it's £8 for adults, £6 for concessions, £4 for children aged 5 to 18, and those under 5 get in free. They also offer a family ticket for £17, which covers 2 adults and up to 3 children. There are discounts for active military personnel, and members of the regimental associations get in free. It's always a good idea to check their website for the most up-to-date pricing and any special offers they might have going on.
Always good to snag a deal, right?
Right.
Now, what if you get hungry during your visit? Do they have any facilities on site?
They don't have their own cafe, but because it's right in the city center, you'll find loads of great cafes, tea rooms, and restaurants just a short walk away. And here's a handy tip. Your admission ticket is valid all day and for a full 12 months from the day you buy it.
Oh, that's nice.
So you can easily pop out, grab a bite to eat, and then come back and see more of the exhibits at your own pace. It's quite a generous offer, really.
That's a fantastic book, especially if you want to really take your time and soak everything in. What about booking tickets in advance?
Yes, you can book your tickets online through their website,
Right.
which I highly recommend, especially during busy tourist times or school holidays.
Right.
And if you're a Max card holder, a York card holder, a York pass holder, a York Mix member, or you have a city sightseeing ticket, you can usually get discounts by using specific promo codes when you book online. Just remember to bring your card or pass with you to show at the reception desk when you arrive.
Okay.
They also have a really good virtual tour on their website, which is a great way to get a feel for the museum before you actually visit.
Perfect for planning your route. What's the best way to get to the museum?
If you're driving, the A1036 and the A19 are the most direct routes.
Okay.
There are convenient car parks nearby, like the Castle Car Park, which is right opposite the museum,
Right.
and St. George's Field, which is just a short walk away. They both operate on a pay-and-display basis. For those using public transport, there are tons of bus services that run through York City Center, and there's also a great park-and-ride system operating from various points around the city.
Andy?
If you're coming by train, York Station is on the main East Coast line, and it's about a 15-minute walk from the museum.
Easy peasy.
For more detailed travel info, I'd suggest checking the I Travel York, York Park and Ride, and the National Rail websites.
Perfect. Anything else visitors should know about museum rules and all that?
Just a couple of things. Pets aren't allowed inside the museum except for registered assistance animals, of course.
Right.
Also, they don't have any luggage storage. So if you have bags with legging, you might want to look into left luggage services in the city center.
Good to know.
Oh, and it's always a good idea to check the museum's website for details on any special events or temporary exhibitions they might have. For example, they have Bomb Happy VE Day 80, Hank and Smudger's stories happening in May, Discover D-Day at the Eye of York in June, and a Military Memorabilia Day in August. These events can really add something special to your visit.
Sounds like there's always something interesting going on.
There is. The museum is really dedicated to education, too. They have loads of great activities and resources for people of all ages.
Oh, that's fantastic.
You can find more information about those as well as more details about their collections and what's coming up in the learning collections and what's on sections of their website.
Great.
And if you want to keep up with the latest news and all the behind-the-scenes stuff, their blog is definitely worth a read. They recently posted about a really interesting donation, some medals and documents that belonged to Private Francis George Finch of the West Yorkshire Regiment who served in Burma. It's just another layer to their already impressive collection.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the York Army Museum, it's clear that this place is much more than just a collection of old military items.
It really is.
Yeah. It's a vibrant and engaging space filled with incredible stories and objects that offer a truly fascinating and often very moving glimpse into British military history, with a special focus on the heritage of the Royal Yorkshire Regiment and the Royal Dragoon Guards. Whether you're a tourist or a local, there's something here to capture your imagination.
I agree. As one visitor put it so well, a visit to this museum isn't just about memorizing facts, it's about having these moving and thought-provoking encounters. It's a chance to connect with the human element that runs through all of history.
And on that note, here's a little something to ponder. As you explore the York Army Museum and encounter these remarkable objects, take a moment to think about the individual stories behind each one.
Hmm.
How do these personal experiences, these frozen moments in time, contribute to the larger story of history? Maybe think about which of the 10 objects we discussed today intrigued you the most and what it tells you about the past. You might find yourself seeing history in a whole new light.
That's a great point.
And to uncover even more of York's hidden treasures and insider tips, be sure to check out Alistair's fantastic book, York Local Knowledge Must Do Top 10s and the Vouchers to Get Them for Less, available on iBooks and Google Books. And for a truly comfortable and welcoming home away from home during your York adventure, don't forget to book your stay at www.houseofyork.org.